Hi, everyone. My name is Rob Scanlon. I work for MITRE. If you're not familiar with MITRE, we are a nonprofit that is funded by the U.S. government to basically work in the public interest by applying engineering and our research capabilities. I'm going to talk a little bit about Inferno. That's some of the work that I'm doing right now. This work is for ONC. That's the Office of the National Coordinator for Health IT, and within the U.S. And they're very interested in improving the ability of patients to access their own healthcare data. And so we're working together to basically put together a test system that helps developers build conformant APIs that conform to popular standards that enable this specific use case, the patient data access use case. It is an open source project, so we are on GitHub there if you want to check it out. We also have a instance hosted at inferno.healthit.gov, so you can also check it out there. But really the intent here is to have a system that you can download and run yourself as well. So I'm actually going to hop right into the demo. I only have one slide, just because it might be easier just to show exactly what it is. So Inferno is a test system, so we're specifically testing for this use case in the US. We're testing the Argonaut data query implementation guide, which really is basically a set of profiles for FHIR, as well as hooks into Smart on FHIR for authorization. So really the idea behind this testing system is that it's more than just testing FHIR profiles and validation, but it's really looking at sort of an end-to-end use case of the full life cycle of a Smart on FHIR app. And that has really driven a lot of the design decisions that you'll see here. But really we also were trying to make this tool as easy to use as possible. It's intended to be very, very lightweight. And really nail down that very one specific patient data access use case. Now, one thing I want to point out, the reason why I'm talking to you guys about this today is, so the tests here are pretty US specific, but the intent behind this tool is that you can plug in your own tests if you're interested, so you can swap things out, and it's pretty modular in that sense. So if you're looking to test, if you have a use case that you're trying to test things that are broader than just necessarily the FHIR RESTful interface, if you need to test Smart on FHIR or other things like that, and you need a pretty robust testing system, then this might be worth checking out. So to get started, so there are actually two interfaces. We have a web interface. We also have a command line interface. I'll show you guys the web interface really quickly first. To get started, you just enter in the URL and click begin of your FHIR server. And you're basically just presented with a list of the tests that you have to pass in order to satisfy conformance to the Argonaut data query implementation guide. Everything that Inferno does is represented within a test. So it won't do anything until you're actually running a test, and then it'll show you what it does in a series of passes and fails. So I'll just start kind of walking through here. The first thing you do is you're running the conformance statement. So this is this specific implementation guide is for DSTU2, so that's a conformance statement as opposed to the capability statement. But it did a couple of things here. We actually ran a set of tests, and we provide a set of results. It also, through the process of executing the test, we learned some things about this demo server. For example, the authorization endpoints, and Inferno saves all that information so that later tests can use it. So if we hop down, so I mentioned this is kind of an end-to-end testing solution. So in order to use a Smart on FHIR app, you actually have to register it, either manually or using dynamic registration, and then you then go and authorize the app to access data, and then you actually start accessing the data. So everything, that whole sort of end-to-end use case is represented as tests here. I'll just go ahead and do the dynamic registration. So right now we're registering Inferno as a app that you can then use to get access to the patient data. I'll go ahead and run a standalone launch sequence. Argonaut defines a couple of different launch sequences that you can use within Smart on FHIR. I'll use the standalone just to sort of point out the type of testing that we can do here. So we're actually going through the whole OAuth handshake, so we're being redirected away from our testing system. We'll just go ahead and, so this sandbox lets you choose an arbitrary user and approve and authorize. And then it goes back and it continues the test. So that whole handshake is represented as a discrete set of tests within this sequence. So this isn't something that you go and beforehand you authorize your client and then you do the testing. The built into the testing is the whole that whole handshake. So now that we've gone through this process, you can actually go and start running some of these other tests. And we've set it up so that you can, as a developer, you can hop around and test different pieces. So if you haven't done the authorization portion, you can go ahead and just sort of plug in a bearer token automatically. But since we already walked through that process, Inferno is smart enough to actually fill that information in automatically, and we can start executing some of the other tests. And you can go and you can, if you're actively developing, you can, and you're failing some things, you can just kind of rerun over and over again. You can play around with some of the inputs to each of the tests and see how it works. And of course, everything is captured, so you can drill in to the results. If it failed, it'll give you some information about that. But then also it captures all of the request and response information that that is a part of that process. So we do have a pretty robust web interface, but we also provide a command line interface because we're developers and we sort of appreciate having an easy way to do it. So looks like I'm running out of time, but really quickly, let me just show that you can do things like you can basically anything that's in the web interface you can do here in the command line interface. You can do simple things like running single sequences, but then you can also go and run more complex things. Really quickly, finally, I just wanted to, I did point out the fact that this is pretty US-centric, these sets of tests, but the whole platform is intended to be built upon, so you can go ahead and plug in your own tests if you want. So basically, if you're looking for a pretty lightweight testing system that and you need to do testing, and your use case requires testing beyond just FHIR to maybe include Smart on FHIR or other things, this might be something worth checking out. And I'll just finish with please check it out. It's on it's on GitHub, and my contact information is right there, and I'd love to hear anything, get any feedback, or see how this kind of tool can be leveraged in other ways. And with that, I'll take any questions if anybody has any. Yep. So this is so Crucible is a very broad FHIR testing tool. So the component, this is actually built on top of the components of Crucible. The intent behind here is very focused end-to-end use case. So Crucible doesn't do a great, so you can do some Smart on FHIR testing, but it's sort of on the side. And whereas this looks at that entire use case, including that, but it doesn't cover the entire FHIR specification. Currently, it just comes with that one. Yes, so we are currently maintaining both, and we'll see. I can't speak to the future of Crucible, but yes, at least in the short term. Yep.
When you run tests, what scopes are you using for Smart?
So it's up to we allow the user to choose that right now. So as I was running through, it lets you kind of put that in. And the reason why for these sets of tests right now is that there is a fair amount of variability realistically in the scopes on different servers. So that's not something that we necessarily require. So as you're walking through the test, you actually say, these are the scopes that I want to use, that give me the access, that gives Inferno the access that it needs to show that it can access all the right data. So. No other questions? Thanks, everybody. Thanks.